But I do think, man, people, I bet I'm going to get hate mail about this.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Next Level. I'm JVL here with my best friends together again. It's been a while. Tim Miller and Sarah Longwell of the Bulwark. Timothy, you wanted to start us off with something. What do you got?
Gang is all here. Gang's all here. Well, it was just more of like a warning or just asking people's forgiveness a little bit if I sound mumbly on the audio or if you notice a very strange lump on my lip on the YouTube video, which people should be subscribed to our YouTube page. And I had about five-year-olds I was in the pool with yesterday. You know,
They beat you up?
being the swamp monster, being the zombie monster, and one of them started to cry a little bit, and I was holding him and taking him to the other side to his mother, and one of the other 4-year-olds jumped off the side of the pool at that moment and karate chopped me in the back of the head and neck after I'd had several beers, and boy, that child is lucky to still be with us. I came up with a bloody lip. So I'm not at 100% here. He hurt the moneymaker. But I'm still trying to survive. Happy Independence Day for everybody.
I just thought you got some injections. You know, I had a pool incident over the long weekend where I was in playing with G Money, and another kid just jumps on my back and yells, "Gotcha, Dad!" And then I turned around, and he looks up at me and goes, "You're not my dad." It was a reminder that in many ways the kids all look the same to us. Like, hey, little kids.
Yeah.
To the little kids, we all look the same too. We're
Yeah.
just like, just an old person. Okay.
Sarah, how was your holiday? You've been gone for weeks. Where have you been?
Well, I was gone. It was work travel on the
Appalachian Trail?
The first leg of it was work. The second leg of it, though, I was in Colorado. We camped by a lake.
Glamping or a tent? The
No,
full
it was in a
deal?
tent. I slept in a tent for several days.
Wow.
You
Sounds
know,
magical.
it was.
Different life.
It's fine. I'm not a huge camper myself, but I do it for my children and family who do enjoy it.
And tribe.
Some would say she is the greatest hero of them all. Okay.
Some would say.
True.
So, Tim, right before everything in the world shut down, you wrote a piece for us because the DeSantis War Room tweeted out a fanfic video about how unreliable Donald Trump is on social conservative stuff. Like, Donald Trump does not hate gays or trans people. So says the DeSantis War Room. But you know who hates them and wants to actually eradicate them from the face of this earth? Ron-based DeSantis. Booyah! Would you like to describe for the people, because it's one of the most batshit crazy things I've ever seen?
Yeah, the video, and this is just another area where DeSantis is trying to copy Trump and failing. The video was not produced by the DeSantis team.
Correct.
It was produced by Proud Elephant US, who may or may not have been a spoof. Unclear if Proud Elephant US is a real DeSantis supporter or a gay person trolling Ron DeSantis, which we're about to find out in a second. But it might be Rick Grinnell's burner, actually, as he's trying to help Donald Trump, because he was very quick to quote tweet it, saying this is homophobic. Anyway, so they shared the Proud Elephant US video with a with the caption, if you will. The tweet was like, "As Pride Month comes to an end, let's hear from the politician who did more than any other to celebrate it." And no, that politician was not Pete Buttigieg. It was Donald Trump. And they show Donald Trump acting normal. I guess this is an attack video. They show Donald Trump saying a few normal things like, "Yeah, it doesn't really matter to me what bathroom Caitlyn Jenner goes into at Trump Tower, not a big deal," and "Ooh, the Islamic terrorists are really bad on gay issues, and we love the gays." Just a couple, normal things that you put into attack at. Because when you're criticizing Donald Trump, those are the clips that you want to pull out. The two times that he sounded like just basically, a human that has a basic respect for other humans. And then the ad goes to this deep house beat.
Oh boy, it is amazing.
And based Ron DeSantis comes in with the glasses
and the eyes, literally the lightning eyes.
Yeah, the eyes and the the glasses that the douchebags wear on the beach, and the whole thing. And then it's like DeSantis, and then he is spliced with other very masculine features, including a shirtless, oiled-up muscle man and
Patrick Bateman.
Achilles. Patrick Bateman and Achilles from the movie Troy. Don't think the maker of this video, unless it's a troll, has read the Song of Achilles, because Achilles not
Achilles
exactly
and
the person you go to
Patroclus,
for
not
heterosexual, very platonic, wonderful piece of summer fiction. If you haven't gotten to it, a little erotic, and then it starts listing all the things DeSantis has done to target the LGBT community, and and how he's passed the most extreme bills, and he's done this, and then it gets to a video of somebody saying that DeSantis has produced some of the harshest, most draconian laws that literally threaten trans existence, and then it's like booyah, and then DeSantis comes back in, and they're like hell yeah. And then the ad ends. And so, in addition to it being very homoerotic for a homophobic ad, like that. So the ad is at the same time kind of humorous and there's much to laugh at, but also like pretty scary. That somebody in the DeSantis team was watching this and they're like, yes,
they get us.
Yes, literally threatening the existence of trans people, wanting to wink at the idea that we should eradicate trans people, is something that we want to, emphasize and put out into an ad. So yeah, alarming and mockable at the same time. And also in this maybe where Sarah can I'd like her view, which I got into in the article, also stupid politically, I think. I don't know that it's that there's that huge of an audience for this on the right of people who aren't already with DeSantis, like super meme, heavy active meme users who hate gays. And it certainly undermines the whole thing, which is like, you can't be the electability candidate and also be the candidate that's like, I want to have a trans Holocaust. Like that, those two things aren't really in symbiosis.
Sarah?
So I have a bunch of thoughts on this. The first one is I just want to talk about the consultant class that is advising Ron DeSantis. Because there is, and I brought this up before, because I've heard this from a couple of consultants where like, oh no, what Ron DeSantis has to do is run to Trump's right. And this is like my least favorite. This makes me crazy because it already assumes what I think is just an insane idea, which is that Donald Trump exists on some ideological spectrum that you can like outflank him on. He doesn't exist on a right or, he's just an insane person. And so, one, this idea of running to his right is stupid. Two, the way that they assume the running to the right is like, we're going to be bigger anti-vax, bigger anti-gay, and like on a host of issues that I think were the things that allowed Donald Trump to gain broad-based popularity. And this is actually a point I steal from Tim, but I highlight often because I think that people do not get this, and Tim has been so right about this particular thing, which is that Donald Trump was seen as a cultural moderate. People forget in 2016 how much he was different. That like one of the things that propelled him, he played the game on abortion, and even he's like at one point was like, yes, I think women who have abortions like should be like murdered.
Should be
like,
put in jail.
Yeah,
and that's when like the right to life movement went in like, no, we don't. That's not our position.
Right.
Now
so he
it
would
is,
say
but
like crazy.
Back then it wasn't their position.
Right. Crazy, insane things, but like on the gay stuff and on other like he was married 3 times, and like this is when. I think it was one of those things that people misunderstood at the time as, well, he can't get elected because conservatives will never tolerate this.
Right.
But actually, sort of culturally moderate, white working class voters especially are like, I don't care that he was married 3 times. Like, I don't care about like I have I don't like love gay people or anything, but like whatever, I don't care about it. And if he wants to do this, like his cultural moderation was an asset, and it was an asset with suburban voters who did care actually about like not being horrible to gay people and think Mike Pence's cultural conservatism is weird. And so
same with his moderation on the wars and Social Security, by the way, just throwing that in there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so
those were both an asset too.
This is where Donald Trump was always, and where people were like, he's authentic and he says what he thinks. he did have his finger on sort of the right mix of policy things, but like what he hit hard, right? The people that he hit hard, immigrants, right?
Yeah.
He went hard on immigration in a way that now Ron DeSantis seems to be like, okay, Trump went super hard on immigrants, and DeSantis has tried to do some of that too, put him on planes, fly him to Martha's Vineyard, see who can be a bigger jerk. But he's made a special thing out of this LGBT stuff. And I think that it works. It's not morally correct, but I think politically it works if you're kind of hanging around the trans sports stuff, which is broadly popular, to have people who, play the sport that corresponds with their biological birth, sex,
gender stuff in schools.
Yeah. Teaching, the little kids, that stuff's going to play, and it's going to play with a bigger group than the left wants to think that it does. But the broad-based sort of gay attacks is unpopular. Now, I do think
Pride Month bad.
Yeah, no, I think they're they are, I think, eroding. I think there is some backsliding in public opinion against gay people. Like, I think they have thrust these back into the public eye in a way in which, now people who kind of had just decided they didn't care about Target having rainbows everywhere, now do. They are mad about the rainbows being everywhere. Right. So, but I just think that this is a mistake politically. I think that Ron DeSantis, but here's the thing that I don't quite understand, Tim, that maybe you can clear up for me, which is the rando on the internet. Mm-hmm. And it's promoted by the DeSantis War Room, which is Christina Pushaw and the PAC. Right?
No, that's the team. But
the PAC
DeSantis War Room is the.
It's the campaign team. It's the campaign side.
Yeah.
But that is Christina Pushaw.
The PAC team is called Never Back Down or something.
It is.
And that is Christina.
So this is.
Is that right? Pushaw.
I think that's how you pronounce her name. She blocked me on Twitter, so I don't know. Very early, she blocked me.
She also has big lips. I don't know if she was kicked in the pool
probably
by a 5-year-old.
That's
there was
probably
something else
where that
happening
comes
there.
But she's a crazy person. But sorry, I just want to make one other point about this ad.
Sorry.
So one of the things that jumped out at me. So I'm a American Psycho fan. I love the movie American Psycho.
You watched American Psycho and you thought, this Patrick Bateman guy is okay, right? Just like Whiplash.
Love that guy.
Just like Whiplash, we're like, wait a minute, he just wants excellence.
I got to tell you, Christian Bale was deeply confusing for me as a teenager because
I
loved him. It was Newsies. It was Newsies. Do you guys?
I know you.
Yeah,
I know you, Wong. Well,
early Christian Bale was him singing and dancing as a newsboy in the Disney film, very pro-union, anti-capitalist movie Newsies, which I loved. He was then in Swing Kids. Which was also amazing if you haven't seen it.
Wait a minute, I love capitalism and women. What is happening to me during this movie?
Anyway, and then he was in Little Women, the early remake. Anyway, love me some Christian Bale. So I saw it also has a young Reese Witherspoon in it. The thing about American Psycho is that Bret Easton Ellis is a gay man writing a parody in American Psycho, and Patrick Bateman is not meant to be a character to be celebrated. He is a rapist murderer who kills prostitutes and homeless people, and his colleagues, a young, beautiful Jared Leto, is murdered in the movie. Sorry, spoiler alert. Anyway, the point is also like Achilles, right? You just said Achilles. That's who it is.
Yeah.
Like Achilles, Bateman is meant to be sort of like a gay,
metrosexual.
Yeah. And so but he has been picked up. So I was camping with my 15-year-old nephew who told me that the on the right, the internet right, the Tate, whatever, Andrew Tate bros, they celebrate Patrick Bateman sort of unironically.
Oh, yeah.
But the idea that the Ron DeSantis campaign would think that Patrick Bateman, rapist and murderer, is like a testament to masculinity.
He's so based.
Unironically, is insane.
He's so based.
Sebastian,
can you effort something for me? Because I just have this sneaking memory somewhere that Bret Easton Ellis is like Trump curious, or was Trump curious himself at some point.
So too.
I don't want to say that that's for real, but maybe see what the Googles tell you about that, Sebastian. I have a question quickly about this. which is, what does Trump do on all of this stuff? Not about this ad specifically, but if in the run-up to Iowa, this sort of attack from DeSantis becomes the thing, does Trump respond or not respond or follow? He has sort of done this very postmodern thing about the trans stuff where he will include a line about it in his speech and then say, yeah, look at this. I talk about, making the economy great again. You people are like, you 5 years ago, you never even knew what trans was, and now you go crazy. Right? And it's a really So what does he do? Does he just sort of follow DeSantis out on this and choke him out? Or does he just stay where he is and just keep demagoguing about endless wars in Ukraine and all that?
Yeah, I think that he does the, kind of like, remember in Good Will Hunting when Matt Damon is like, you're really into sheep there. This is something we need to spend some time on. I don't know what it is. And I think that he kind of does that with DeSantis, which is like, right, like, yes, we need to be strong on the trans, and, he does the Trump thing, but like, but Ron does seem a little obsessed with this, right? Like, doesn't he seem to be talking about it a lot? And it's all a little weird. It's a little weird that
Mr. DeSanctimonious, right?
Yeah, Mr. DeSanctimonious, who's so uptight and like, wants to, talk so much about the gays. I
saw that picture of you in those big white boots, and I thought, is this trans? Right? You could see that being...
right, exactly. Yeah, there you go.
You could see that.
Yeah, yours was closer than mine, but you see the vein that he would try to mine. I think that's it for him, and I think that that's a fine place to be. And going back to what Sarah was talking about that cultural kind of view that Trump has, Trump was able to take from both lanes. Right, because he takes from the evangelicals because they're like, we're cutting a deal with this guy. Like, it's transactional. We get that it's not real, and then the people that don't care about all this stuff, so much, they go with Trump because they're like, oh, Trump's with me on this. Like, we're all in the same, right? And so he can take from both parts of the pie of the Republican primary electorate. DeSantis is just driving himself straight into the Ted Cruz lane, right? Like, where those are the only people that he can get with the stuff like this. It's so weird. So I don't know that this was like a distinct strategy for DeSantis, because like I said, it's the campaign sharing one video that someone else did. But I think it speaks to the culture of the campaign that we've been talking about. It's this very online campaign culture that people know that they think that it's that they think this is a safe space to make fun of gays. They think that this is something that they is part of their a strategic advantage, if you will. Smashing as Christina under her own name said, opposing Pride Month is we wouldn't have a straight Pride Month, right? It's unnecessary and divisive and pandering to have a Pride Month. So this is his spokesperson. They feel that it's okay to be anti this stuff. I also enjoyed, as I'm looking at the Sebastian response, that he wasn't familiar with the name Bret Easton Ellis. Like, we're in Gen X. We're in like the Xennial thing. We're like, Bret Easton Ellis is like, it's like Gen Z, it's like he's talking about a TikTok star, and we're like, Bret Easton, you don't know Bret Easton Ellis? As I'm 47 years old. It's like Charlie quizzing me about musicals. Anyway, on Mr. Trump, Ellis insists there's been an overreaction to his election. Yeah. He is this reactionary figure too, right? So it's not, I don't think that it's surprising that they have co-opted his character.
Yeah, and like Glenn Greenwald, this is the other line from Ellis,
right.
Quoting here from, thank you, Sebastian. I'm a free thinker in many ways, Ellis told host Tucker Carlson, and I did see something wrong with the portrayal of Trump in the media. I thought the media was covering him in a way that wasn't necessarily truthful. There are bigger fish to fry than just this aspiring autocrat. Yeah. There were some people in the media who weren't totally on side all the time. Yeah. Very concerning. Okay. This actually is a fairly nice segue to talk about the Supreme Court. And we had a bunch of rulings last week. Everybody, I think, got to be mad. I think everybody got to come away from the rulings in some way thinking that something that they cared about had been done dirty. We had a really nice piece by our buddy David French in the New York Times arguing that, in a funny way, both Christians and drag shows are both working together to uphold the framework of the First Amendment, which was pretty good. Sarah, did you have reactions? Did you even clock any of this stuff? Does anybody?
Yeah, this was me walking up the mountain with my cell phone on its last 10% battery because I had nowhere to charge it, trying to read quickly the Supreme Court decisions so that I could react to them, and like had to go to my car and charge it just enough so I could see what people were saying about the 303 case. And
Mommy has to read the concurring opinions.
You know, I think I may be one of the few people who feels like pretty good, actually, about where the court landed. Nobody's going to like me for this, but I generally think that striking down affirmative action is fine. I think that schools can, there's like a million ways. It's like a, what is it, a Pyrrhic thing? Like, schools can still consider race. They can consider all kinds of things to figure out how to diversify. I think that the cultural conversation we were having around it is much more toxic than the decision. I think that pitting minority groups against each other in this way is not good. And so I was just like, that one just doesn't bother me. I think that the country as a whole doesn't love the idea of affirmative action. I have never loved the idea of affirmative action. I think it is. I think that the soft bigotry of low expectations is a good line and a real line around the idea that we, that it robs people, whether it's black people, it robs minorities of their people's perceptions of their achievement, to have this idea of sort of race-based things that I think is like deeply unfair then, and like it feeds the culture something bad about like, did this person do this on the merits? And so I was fine with that one. And I'm interested in I was following what Tim was saying about the 303 case, but I'm also generally okay with that one. I've always had a little bit of complicated feelings about both the Masterpiece Cake Shop and then this one. They're sort of similar cases where I think that the way that...
Bake me a lesbian cake,
yeah,
bigot.
right. I mean, like, but like in both cases, sort of the way that the cases came up were both sort of conjured from thin air around, like, the Masterpiece Cake guys, like, the gay couple that did that, like, went looking for this person who wouldn't bake the cake to bring the case. And in this case, they all like, then I was like following George Conway pretty closely, and basically his argument, which to me sounds about right, is that they all agreed to the stipulations in the case, and that it wasn't a real grievance. It was a, like, what do they call it? A something.
It's like a weird hypothetical.
But like this is apparently, listening to David French and George Conway, like, this is a thing that happens all the time. People are like, I might have an expectation of being prosecuted or like have trouble for this. Like, if somebody asks me to do this and I say no, and so I want to get out ahead of it. Now, in all these cases, people are like seeking the limelight and
a pre-enforcement
challenge. Thank you. But like, I've just never been that into the idea that if somebody doesn't want to make a website for my wedding, or doesn't want to bake me a cake for my thing, I will go to a different person who will. And like, there are plenty of cake bakers and website makers. I think some of the, I like do not understand why you would ever want to compel somebody who didn't want to make that or wasn't comfortable with it to do it.
Why would you want to give them your money?
Yeah, I just like that.
Why would you want to support their business? I thought we boycotted people like that. Isn't that the answer?
That's right. Now, when people come back and do the like, well, do you think it's okay if they don't want to express their support for an interracial couple? Like, I sort of understand some of the pushback and think it can be fair. And I thought, I'll let Tim characterize his pushback. I want him to talk about it because he had a strong opinion on this that I thought was, I think I agree with it, but let's play it out.
I think you agree with it too.
Okay.
If you want to just let me cook on it for a second,
please.
Because I fundamentally kind of agree with the text of the decision, and me and David, I feel like we should have had a David French podcast. So I'm going to feel bad right now, like I'm criticizing him back with his opinion when we were kind of doing it on Twitter, and I think we could have a good longer discussion on this because I think that his argument and others comes from a good place where they're making the case that this is about compelled speech, not about identity, right? Like this idea that somebody shouldn't be compelled to put out a website about something they don't believe in. I totally agree with that. Like I think anybody should be able to reject a potential client as a website maker for any issue, and I agree with that in the on the merits. And that is how the court saw this case. And my point is, that's actually not what this case was about. And they're saying that's what it's about, but like it's really about anti-gay animus. And it's like pretty obvious that it's about anti-gay animus because they fabricated this example, and the example was gays getting married, right? Now this lady, now here, I just want to pull up what David said here to get it exactly right. He said this case was not, as has been widely described, about whether a website designer could refuse gay customers. That would be both illegal and immoral, and I would not participate in such a case. And I guess David is right that the case they brought wasn't, they said explicitly I would serve a gay customer if they wanted to have me make them a website about, whatever, how much they like dogs. And that's I guess could be true. But in reality, like this case was literally about whether a website designer could refuse gay customers. She was not saying I would refuse to do a website for a wedding about anything that I considered sinful or against my morals. She did not bring up multiple examples. She did not say, well, if Satanists came to me and asked me to do a website about their wedding, I wouldn't do it. She didn't say, well, I wouldn't do a website about a wedding that happened at the Casa Bonita with a non-ordained minister. I wouldn't do a website where on the About Us page, they said that we've been living in sin together for 10 years, or this is our 7th marriage, and I didn't really realize I found love until I met Ethel while I was cheating on my wife. Like there are when you go to like websites, weddings are insane. Like if you look at the whole panoply of American existence, at the whole of America existence, and all the types of weddings that people have, I'm gonna have a clown minister, and we're pansexual. Like we're gonna cut each other during the ceremony. Like there's all kinds of insane wedding ceremonies that happen. And this person specifically said, no, I wouldn't do a gay wedding. And then she fabricated a client that didn't exist, about halfway through this process, saying that someone did come to me and ask for a gay wedding website. And the person that she fabricated was hypothetically gay. But that wasn't true. The person that she fabricated was a heterosexual website designer in San Francisco. And so, Megan McArdle, a lot of other people who are good faith, Megan McArdle wrote that, like, you should be aware that a lot of other precedents you like, from Griswold to Lawrence Turow, involve plaintiffs whose case was manufactured or moot by the time of decision. And so, like, okay, my objection to this is not that, they use this pretrial motion that is common to use in these sorts of cases. Like that's not my objection. My objection is to say that, like, on the merits, if you look at this case, what this woman was objecting to was homosexuals marrying. That's what she didn't like. She didn't like the gays were getting married. It wasn't that she didn't like that the institution of marriage was under threat, or it wasn't that she didn't like that people might come to her with a wedding website that she would have to put something on there that she didn't like. I'm sure there are millions of things, right? Like, how about a wedding website that had people, you have pictures of you and your spouse. Maybe they're wearing T-shirts she didn't like, or maybe they're doing things that are sinful in other ways, right? Like, that's not she imagined that gays came to her and said, no, I wouldn't want to serve gays. Like, that's what this was. Like, it was a lot closer to, the lunch counter example than people who are supporting this on the conservative side in good faith want to admit. And so I still am kind of on her side, but I wish that the response to this was more like the example you always bring up, Sarah, about like the ACLU defending the KKK protests. Like, it'd be one thing if David French and Megan McArdle and these people are out there saying, like, this lady's pretty gross, actually.
Yeah.
And and this is a free country, and anybody should be able to reject and not be forced to give speech that they don't like. But in this instance, like, this lady just basically seems to hate gay people. Yeah. Like, this does not seem to be a case about good faith religious, objection. Like, this does not seem to be a case about, a broad-based feeling of wanting to only serve Christian, weddings that are Christian and good, people that are following biblical virtue or following Catholic doctrine or whatever it is. That wasn't that. It was like, I don't want to serve gays if they're getting married. Sure, I might hypothetically serve a gay if they came to me and asked me to do a website about something not gay. And so to me, like, it really was about their immutable characteristics, like, that she didn't want to do. And so I think it's a really borderline instance. And I think that the people defending it on free speech ground were, like, purposefully trying to hide that. And like, purposely trying to cloud, like, the reality of this case. And so anyway, that's why it annoyed me. And, like, the decision annoyed me less than kind of like we're gonna push back on all the liberals that want to object to this, like, thing about this. When I was like, no, it's a pretty close call. And as I said my last thing on this, and I keep saying, like, the one example I always come to, and I think this is maybe triggering as a Catholic who had to go to multiple Catholic people, straight people's second weddings, I'm always like, for some reason, these hypothetical cases never are, I'm a Catholic website designer and I will only do weddings for Catholics. And if you're coming to me in your third marriage, we will not, as a straight person, we will not do this website unless you can show me that it's been annulled by the church. And by the way, if somebody wanted to do that, I would say, good for you. I appreciate you, and I don't agree with that. Like, that's not my faith, but, like, that would be consistent
principle.
But that's never it. It's never that. It's always, oh, I'm not going to do the gay cake, and it's like, or I'm not going to do the gay website. And so to me, it's like, that's pretty close to the lunch counter. It's teetering. Yeah. It's teetering towards the lunch counter from the compelled speech thing.
All right. Well, while we're at the lunch counter, let's talk about affirmative action. This got, I would say, more.
Hold on, before we talk about affirmative action, Sarah, do you agree with me now? You said you weren't sure if you agreed with me.
Yeah. Well, again, this was like me trying to catch the Twitter debate on from the top of the mountain with bad cell servers. No, I agree with that. And I think the KKK case is a really good one because it is important. I think that the Supreme Court is meant to be, as an institution, someone who says, I disagree with what you say, or this is a gross position, but it would be sort of the same way, sort of Roe, right? Like, I think that this is immoral. I don't agree with it, but, like, the law and freedom, like, our commitment to these values compel us to say that this is a choice that people get to make between, like, a woman and her doctor. And the KKK one, the ACLU was super clear. This is despicable speech. Like, this was really gross. It is also something that we have to defend. And, like, you're absolutely right that it is. So I agree with the case. I had no problem with how the case was decided. It's the ephemera of people who celebrate it as a big win for, like, Christians, when really it's just like, oh yeah, no, yes, you can discriminate against gay people. Like, you can,
cool.
And so, like, I think it's good to call it what it is, and to note the hypocrisy and the fact that this isn't a principled position on her part, and it's probably even worse, right? Like, was she really worried about being prosecuted, or, like, did she want to be the new face and spokesperson? Is she going to show up at
TPUSA with Kyle Rittenhouse?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Is that like the future here?
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, Josh Hawley's wife was in charge of the group that funded this.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not like, come on.
Right.
All right. So affirmative action. I'm going to guess you guys are both slightly split, but also slightly in the same side on this one too. No?
I mean, I said what I thought. Did you agree with what I said?
I basically agree with Sarah.
Yeah.
I basically do.
Okay.
I think I might not. So this is a very situational. So here's where we get out. I'm not a constitutional scholar. Should the Supreme Court be weighing in on this? I don't know. Because there are things that I get worried about, right? Which is, like, I'm not really concerned about the impact of this decision, because right now elite colleges are mostly run by libs who want them to be diverse, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, the practical element of this, right? California doesn't have affirmative action. It's not as if UC Berkeley and UCLA are not really bending over backwards to try to make themselves diverse. And in some ways, I think I said this on the intro to the Pablo Torre podcast. I did kind of a little monologue just on this issue. And I said, hope maybe there could even be a good outcome, which is that it forces schools to look at low-income areas and be like, okay, we're going to make sure we get our diversity, because we're going to, like, go to this area in rural West Virginia and this area on the West Bank and New Orleans and pick the best kid from that area because we know, and that's maybe a good thing, right? that it really does expand diversity in a socioeconomic way to people who could use the help. But I'm not against affirmative action. So this is the thing, right? And I think that there was a time when it was really needed, and I think you could imagine a time in the future where it's needed again. And so I don't know that I love that, like, oh, you're banned from considering that. I don't really love that, I guess, because we're not that good at predicting the future. Everybody kind of thinks that the future, we're on this sort of path towards, what's the buzzword on the left about where
equity,
all the cross pressure? No, equity and all the cross pressure.
Intersectionality.
Thank you. Like we're on our way towards an intersectional future, and it's like maybe, but like maybe not. And you can imagine a situation in the future where it is important that schools are able to do this, and I think that it would really start to worry me if this same kind of principle now moves into businesses, and now jobs can't, and there's certain industries where being able to look at diversity is really important. So anyway, I think the catastrophizing about some people on the left was not right, and I think that the outcome of this case will be have a pretty minimal impact on what happens at elite universities, and I don't think that the fringe cases of elite universities are really that important anyway. Who gets screwed over? I get sucks for you, but that isn't our biggest public policy problem. So anyway, that's where I have kind of mixed views on it.
Let me make this a little bit more complicated. Great. Because I have very, very conflicted thoughts on this myself. My background in all this comes from medical school admissions, where I myself did not get into medical school. I deserved not to get into medical school. This is, it's good that I was not allowed to practice medicine. Although, as 1/16th of a doctor, I am 1/16th of the way qualified to offering advice to people like Sarah. That's part of what I do.
I do go to JVL for all my medical needs.
Right. If it falls on 1/16th of the body that I was qualified on.
Yeah.
The point is, so I saw a lot of this, a lot of affirmative action in medical school admissions, and it really cheesed me off. A lot of my Asian friends got the short end of the stick on this. But on the other hand, there is a question of, well, who is this really for? And in medicine, you get to a really, really interesting situation. So I emailed with one of our readers who is a doctor, recently retired from rural Missouri. And she talked about how in rural areas of the country, real doctor shortages, because the type of people who can get themselves into medical school and be upwardly mobile don't want to go live in the middle of nowhere. So it's hard to get doctors to rural parts of the country. And you get, in some of those underserved communities, very different outcomes if you have like an African-American community where there are no African-American doctors, there are no African-American lactation consultants to help, mothers. And because of the systemic racism stuff, you wind up getting some outcomes that aren't as much as you want. Because, again, the art of medicine, right, is why they call it an art, it's a lot of soft, it isn't just like a science experiment. It's a lot of soft skill interactions between doctors and patients. And I can see the argument, again, from as part of my cheese, that actually if the point of medicine is to try to get docs who, can practice good medicine, there are situations where, really, it can be helpful to at least have as an option in a community a doctor who's African-American, who shares that sort of experience and can be trusted by the patients. And so I feel conflicted on all of these things, because you look at is it fair to the hardworking Asian son of immigrants who wasn't able to get into his medical school? But is getting into medical school about him, or is it about serving the patients, right? And this is where I'm saying that there's a real tension.
Yeah, I have a different view on this, sort of, which is we need more doctors. We need lots more doctors of all
good
kinds
doctors,
of.
Not doctors like me.
No, not doctors like you.
Right.
But also your temperament is because you kind of hate people.
You're
great with me. You're great. Maybe you would have been a great surgeon.
Surgeons don't like people either.
I would like us, this is one of my just overall views, is that if you put me in charge of everything, the first thing I would do is be we need more nurses, we need more teachers, we need more doctors, we need more home health aid workers, putting people We just need a lot more of these people. But you're right. But why can't we train more people? Like, why does it have to be like? There are lots of people who could. If you got really
there's
good
an
training,
explanation for that on the question of medicine. We could get into it off air, just because it's so resource intensive.
Yeah.
Why do we have to get into it off air?
The number of people you can push through the
stupid?
pipe.
Yeah.
To be ready to practice medicine is relatively inelastic. Because I mean there's like 121 medical schools in the country. I think hasn't been more than 123 medical schools for 50 years. Their class sizes are reasonably set because, again,
can we not build more? Can we not change that? It feels like we need more doctors. Like, they shut down all the rural hospitals. Now people in rural areas like can't get the help they need anyway, and whatever. And I'm for also just generally this idea of having doctors that people are more comfortable with, not just racially, but like, I will tell you the idea. I would never see a male gynecologist. I just wouldn't. And like, I'm so glad there are more women doctors now. It used to be all men. I know.
It used to be.
Or like
40 years ago, 100% of OBGYNs were men.
Yeah.
I know.
I have a male gynecologist in my family, as a matter of fact. I won't let him. I'll tell him not to fast forward through this part of the podcast.
Yeah, which is, it's probably unfair of me, but like, if you ask, it's just like, I don't know, I got a massage when I was in Colorado, and they were like, what do you prefer? And I was like, I want not a dude.
Right.
And like,
best possible care allows the patient to communicate more effectively. Because again, this is what so much of medicine is. If you guys ever used to watch House, the fantastic series, right? His line was, everybody lies, right? And the patients are always lying. And the hardest part of the art of the medicine is really like getting the patient history, getting the patient to communicate to you clearly what's wrong, what feels wrong, when it onset, et cetera, et cetera. So, like, is this about fairness, or is it about getting the best possible care? Because both doctors and patients are not perfectly rational actors, and like, people are weird. Anyway, okay.
Just by the way, I want to, after having listened to this conversation, I want to weigh in that I'm besides having conflicted views and thinking that the result of this case is not going to really be that big of a deal at scale. I still can basically, this is why I basically come down against it, right? It's like there should not be I do not think there should be a blanket ban on private institutions like deciding what criteria like they want to use, right? Like, doesn't the freedom element of this cut against the website designer lady, right? Like, if the website designer lady doesn't want to take in gays, like, should a college, should a private institution be able to decide that they want to use?
The law has protected classes based on, like, race, creed, sex, right? I mean, the law has always had carve-outs for discrimination, right? Not always had carve-outs.
I think that what we should do is we should continue to lift up diversity as a cultural value. That as part of pluralism, as part of an out of many one, as part of who we are as Americans. We should also be expanding our definition of what diversity means. I think we've had a really narrow, sort of silly notion of diversity that is created some of the problems on universities. Like, there should be more ideological diversity. There should be more geographical diversity. There should be more
that's why
socioeconomic diversity.
That's why Yale Law brought Stuart Rhodes in, right? And that's why Josh Hawley got to go to the Ivies, and fat lot of good the ideological diversity has done when all they do is let in the psychopath conservatives.
Yeah, that's totally
right. And bring in some normies.
And we should want racial diversity. I've heard people argue, and this is sort of an interesting way of sidestepping it, where it's like, you can get the same outcome, but using different criteria. So instead of using race-based
zip codes, right.
Yeah, you
zip codes.
You expand both first generation. You expand socioeconomic. I can't remember what some of the other ones were, but like that it will roughly approximate the same outcome, if not have the outcome be even more advantageous for underserved communities of all kinds.
I agree with all that, and like I said, I agree with all that, and I think that that's probably will be the main outcome. But then the question is, and I hate to malign a specific university, specifically one that, my close buddies went to, but like, I trust Harvard and Kenyon and George Washington to do that a little more than I trust Ole Miss.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, might at some point we want Ole Miss to have a quota?
Maybe. Although,
so that like the black
people
black
who work
folks
in
in
the
Mississippi.
development department,
Ole Miss?
sorry, not the development department, the admissions department.
I don't want to malign anybody. I'm sure there's some good people in the admissions department in Ole Miss. I'm just saying, if you think about it that way, right? Like, if the conversation is always about Harvard, it's
totally
easy for the cons to be like, let's roll our eyes. This is ridiculous.
The school whose mascot is literally a Confederate soldier.
Yeah. Well, not anymore. They got rid of
okay.
Oh yeah, they got rid of Colonel Reb.
Good.
But still, when you think about it as Ole Miss, you're kind of like, I don't know. Maybe they should have a 15% quota to make sure that folks from Jackson are getting in. Anyway.
All right.
Also, just real quickly on student loans, agree with that decision.
Okay.
Obviously.
Like, Biden administration knew that was illegal when they did it. It was
Nancy Pelosi agreed with the decision.
And people, I just, anyway, I'm not mad about what the court did. I do think that people who are challenging the idea of the legitimacy of the court as it currently exists, I think are incorrect. Like, I actually think that here's just another case. I'm sure people were not following closely the independent state legislature case. Court ruled great on it. I mean, in my world, where people were super
that was actually
concerned,
the most important of all of these cases. Yeah,
they ruled very much in favor of democracy. I think we should be, heartened.
What was that vote, Sarah?
It was 6-3.
6-3. Okay.
Yeah, it was 6-3, and look.
I feel like it should have been 8-1.
It should have been 8-1
or 9-0.
But I don't know.
Whatever.
I feel like it should have been 9-0.
I was surprised Gorsuch. It was Gorsuch, Thomas, and Alito.
Thomas. I'm shocked.
Well, so you're not shocked about Thomas. You're not shocked about Alito. Like, both of these guys are basically one step above a right-wing talk show host. But like Gorsuch, I was kind of surprised at. But I do think, man, I bet I'm going to get hate mail about this. I think that Kavanaugh and Coney Barrett can be trusted on issues of democracy, broadly.
I hope we don't ever have to find out.
Yeah.
Boom. All right. Sarah, give me a focus group update. Because Sebastian told me you had some spicy stuff.
I'm not going to do a whole. I'm going to guest host Charlie next week, and I want to do.
We've got 3 minutes. Give me just a teaser.
I'm just going to tell you my favorite thing from a group like a week or so ago, which was, somebody raised the idea Hunter Biden. We haven't talked much about Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden, copping a plea, and in trouble. And that group, when we were talking about it, the group was like, the submarine that exploded. Mm-hmm. They thought, half the group thought that was done to distract from the Hunter Biden.
Did George Soros blow it up?
Verdict.
Wait, hold on. What do you mean by thought? Like, you asked them and they said yes, or
so it was 4 out of 9.
Someone volunteered it.
It sort of came up. It sort of came up as and it was suspicious how this, and so then we asked about how many people think, and so there was. So I'll tell you a few things that just have been in the trends. In the trends are, in the 2-time Trump voting groups, still seeing a lot of Trump support. Still seeing for the people who support DeSantis, and they're still in there, especially among college groups. Like the last college group, 2-time Trump voters we did, they broke half and half, Trump and DeSantis. But we asked in their hearts who they wanted, and then more people wanted Trump. So DeSantis still has this edge on electability, where some people just say electability. There's still a sense that there are too many never Trumpers who will not ever vote for Trump. I think it's interesting. I think it's bad for DeSantis that electability is the main argument, because I think that will erode over time. I think that the more polling that there is that shows Trump beating Biden, and also because part of what part of what is central to the way that these Republicans are thinking about Biden is that Biden is like totally infirm, totally, you know, out of his mind, dementia, whatever. And so like saying that Trump can't beat that guy starts to not work for them. Like the more they can,
sense.
the more they talk about Joe Biden being just mentally incapacitated, the more I think it's easier to be like, of course Trump can beat him.
Look,
like,
if Trump is beating Ron DeSantis, young, vigorous, conservative Ron DeSantis by 35 points, of course he's going to beat Weekend at Bernie's Joe Biden. Right? Like it doesn't make sense to think otherwise.
Yeah. Trump's also just been successful, I think, at driving up his unfavorables. Like people like DeSantis. Actually, I want to make this clear. Actually, the voters in the focus groups still like DeSantis. They just like him in a way where like 8 months ago or whenever I was talking about the big DeSantis boomlet I was seeing in the groups, he was all potential then. And there was a lot of excitement around his potential. I really like this DeSantis guy. He really seems like he's onto it. And now it's more like, you know, I like him. I think he seems good, but it's not his time, I don't think. Or
have you
he's
heard his
young.
voice?
It's not that but they still like him. It's just tempered so much now in a way that it wasn't before. And I think this is what happens when potential meets reality. Right? He's not just something.
Well, his upside is capped for them now. The experience of having seen him and seeing what he really is means that infinite ceiling is now like bam. They've like, oh, okay, that's where this elevator gets off, right?
I have a one gay focus group.
Yeah.
That I can bring to you also. Per JVL's request after the Ron DeSantis video came out.
I didn't want to ask about this in case you hadn't done it.
I messaged a couple of the Gays Against Groomers.
Right.
For
people not in the expanded universe, can you give like the 15-second version on who these kids are?
Yeah. So at the Turning Point USA conference, I encountered a group of people that they were college age, maybe a little post-college, young gay men who had joined a group called Gays Against Groomers. Was in support of Ron DeSantis' Don't Say Gay bill and the supposedly grooming teachers and grooming libs and all that, and that are trying to turn the kids gay. And they were strong conservatives, also pro-gay, like Rick Ronell. Many of them were DeSantis people, pro-DeSantis. And so I messaged a couple of them, heard back from one who said that, that made him seem desperate. And he's already been kind of off DeSantis for a few weeks. And it kind of seems inevitable that it's going to be Trump anyway. And DeSantis is looking weak. So that is... not so good from the activist group. My heterosexual one-person focus group, my uncle, who I made a brief stop in St. Louis to see my 98-year-old grandmother. God love her. She's just unbelievable, still kicking. And I stopped by my uncle's house, and he was an early Trump person, so he's a canary in the coal mine for me, way back in like 2015. And college educated, though. And he is off the Trump train, too much drama, but really excited about DeSantis, though. Was really excited about DeSantis, though, is increasingly looking at Vivek.
I'm telling you.
And he has popped up to 10 in that recent, was it a national poll or was it one of the states? He popped up to 10 in a poll recently.
I said this to you guys, right? That when I was in Iowa... Did I talk to you guys about Iowa?
2 months ago, I was like, don't sleep on Vivek.
Yeah, no, but when I was in Iowa, maybe I told JVL this on the Seeker Pod, and Tim, I haven't talked to you about, but when I was doing the PBS thing with Judy Woodruff, and we were filming in Iowa, like, Vivek has been hanging out in Iowa. So, like, these guys know him, and they are, so first of all, the first group, everybody wanted Trump, so it didn't matter, but loved Vivek, liked him. In the second group, the college-educated group, half the group was like, well, I don't think Trump's electable. And so, like, maybe DeSantis. But they were like, but you know who I really like? And they were like, and so
this was my uncle.
Their heads were saying DeSantis, but their hearts were saying
I got to
Vivek.
tell you, look, this is the most unscientific thing in the world. But I have started to see in New Jersey, whose primary isn't until God knows when, I'm starting to see Vivek lawn signs pop up in the wild where there are zero other lawn signs. It's not like, just there are a couple people up here who like him strongly enough that they are a year out from the primary popping their lawn signs out there. And the only other person you see with any sort of like paraphernalia stuff is Trump. And I think I've seen one DeSantis bumper sticker. So again, not science, but there is an energy to the big V.
So Sebastian put in the chat that we had one person in the focus group last week who said Vivek can't win because of his name. But I'll just, and like, so that I think that's like a little true. Like it's, or like there's something in there. But I got to tell you, when I went to Iowa, I have been pronouncing his name Vivek for a long time, and it is Vivek. And the people in Iowa knew how to pronounce it correctly. Yeah. But also, there's a lot, I've had plenty of people in the focus groups who are like, you know who I like? That guy, the one with the name, Ramamamama, and like they can't pronounce it. That doesn't mean they don't like him. That doesn't mean they won't. That doesn't mean they won't take a shot at it. And so I think, listen, it is much worse to be, it is much worse. This is racial animus in the Republican Party comes nowhere close to rhino animus. And it is much worse to be Nikki Haley. You know who they like every bit as much as Nikki Haley or Tim Scott or Mike Pence? RFK Jr. Like he has just as much support.
Oh, more.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, the Gays Against Groomer, he threw that at me. Actually, I got that. He's like, I've been intrigued by some of the things that RFK Jr. has been saying.
He's making a lot of sense.
Like,
these voters have also been intrigued by some of the things, but like they're just as pleasant about the Democrat RFK.
So here's something before we get out, because it's been a hella long show.
Has it?
I will say that in general,
done another hour.
The next 18 months are going to be full of misery and bad tidings. But the one thing we can look forward to is the first poll where Vivek pops above DeSantis. Because that moment is going to be glorious.
And Sebastian said so this was the Echelon National poll. And it was DeSantis had 16 and Vivek had 10. I mean, he's on his heels.
Oh,
he's on his heels.
I am going to savor that like a fine glass of port.
I forget who I was on. So somebody else was asking me to assess the DeSantis thing, and the Vivek National poll to me, and Iowa poll, that combines with Christie, New Hampshire, Tim Scott, South Carolina. Like once, and I really think once one of those things happen is when the wheels really come off for DeSantis, because I still think he's holding steadier than the pundit class wants to say. But if you get to a point where Vivek is past him, or Christie's past him in New Hampshire, or Scott's past him in South Carolina, like it starts to get really bleak down in Tallahassee. I've been in those campaign offices, and the tidings are not good down there, even if they might be positive on certain.
Couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
So the Never Back Down, the PAC came out, and one of the things I saw over the break was that they said that if Trump doesn't debate, DeSantis won't debate because it's a two-man race as far as they're concerned. And like that is essential for them, this idea that it's a two-man race. Right. And the second it becomes not a two-man race is when DeSantis is screwed. And
by the way, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
That is a very bad
DeSantis
decision.
Absolutely has to debate, and if he does not, then the first poll where Vivek passes DeSantis will be the first poll after that first primary.
No, I mean he has to debate, and at the debate he has to kill Trump. Right, he's got to stand there and go after Trump as a groomer and blah 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 the whole time, and ignore everybody else going after him.
He's got to do something to change the dynamic. This is not Tim. Sorry, JVL. I know. Good show, long show. But hold on. This is a thing that I've been kicking around in my head, which is all right. Do you know, JVL, that when I met Tim, I scooped him up super demoralized, coming off John McCain's campaign, because John McCain was running a distant third at the time. Like his campaign was just cratering. And then I got to be with Tim while John McCain then went on an ascent and became the nominee. And Tim had left the campaign thinking he was done. And so I do think, and I saw two things that really interested me recently. One was I was going back and looking at like what was John McCain's polling in July of 2007. And it was bad, like horrible. Just super bad, right? Yeah. And this is like when I met Tim for the first time. The other thing was somebody posted this thing about, look, 76% of voters are unhappy with their choices between the two major nominees. And those two major nominees are John McCain and Barack Obama. Yeah. So just to put the Americans' constant sense of dissatisfaction with their two nominees and like just to pour a little more cold water on some of the no-label stuff.
But the difference in the McCain...
Yeah, so...
Go ahead, what was your question?
No, my question to you is this idea of like, does Ron DeSantis, can he do the McCain thing? Like, what does the dynamic shift that brought, obviously he is no John McCain, But like
Yeah.
that is, they've got to be clinging to that theoretically, right? That idea that you can be running there and
For
then
sure
come
they're
back
clinging
up.
to, for sure they're clinging to that, and I remain thinking that's possible. Biden is another good parallel to that, right? Biden's polling is never as bad as DeSantis's, but McCain's was
Biden
for
ran
sure.
wire to wire nationally.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, sure, but in the early state polls, if you're looking at the early state polls, but you're right in the national polls, so it's a very different situation. The McCain situation is more similar, just in that McCain's numbers got to around the low tens, where DeSantis
but there was no dominant front runner. There was no guy over 50%.
Yeah, it was like Giuliani and Fred
Yeah.
Thompson were
It's
the
Giuliani who has all these weaknesses. It's Mitt who'd come out of nowhere and was a Mormon,
Right.
and had been a moderate
And
governor.
these guys were all
you know.
ping-ponging around up and down,
Yeah,
right?
so it's you can't beat somebody with nobody type thing. And so this is the DeSantis thing is like, well, for DeSantis to reemerge, he has to, the alternative of Trump has to collapse, right? Like the DeSantis theory of the case is that a vacuum happens because Trump ends up in jail or whatever, or like has a heart attack, or like that. Like essentially, I think that is it, because the McCain situation was different in that case. I was much younger and much less grizzled, and so I really did think that was over. And then they asked me to come back on the campaign. I don't know if you remember this, Sarah, and leave you and abandon you at the job we were working at together. But I just come out of the closet and I was like, whatever. I was sad that it happened, but I was sad that he made the comeback. But I was like, I'm going to live my life in Washington. I'm not. They're like, all right, man, it's all good. We're going to move you to Ohio now. And I was like, move back to Ohio? I was like, I just spent 3 years in Iowa. So the McCain thing is, I think it is always fair to caution that these presidential primaries are different than Senate primaries, and they have a life of their own, and dynamics can change, and earned media, things can happen that shake up the snow globe. But like that parallel is very different than this, just because of Trump's dominant position. McCain wasn't running up against anybody like that. It ended up being Huckabee, actually. Huckabee wins Iowa, and so it's like, this is not exactly a formidable force.
Yeah, and didn't like Newt then win South Carolina?
No, that's
like
2012. That's the next one.
okay. Oh, that's right. Oh yeah, because Santorum was like also
You guys really do want to do a 2-hour show, don't you?
We haven't talked to each other in a while.
We could have done student loans. You cut us off before we could have done a half hour on student loans. I got a bunch of other people I'd like to make fun of. I had a little Ben Shapiro bit I didn't get to. All good though. It's fine. We got to leave people wanting more.
Save it for the next time. Guys, good show, long show. Please go and leave us 5 stars. Hit the subscribe button. Mash the thumbs up. All the things. Do the things. Then go to thebulwark.com and sign up to get Charlie Sykes' email every morning for free. And we do a bunch of other free stuff too. Go
listen to the Will Salatan, Lindsey Graham podcast.
Oh, yes. Or do it on YouTube too.
Yeah.
You can do either way.
And I'm in for Charlie tomorrow and Friday on the main pod. So
Thanks for helping me out
so
there,
much Tim. You're going to get so much Tim this week. I'm in for Charlie on Thursday and Friday.
See, I'm helping you save your material.
We got a Sunday show. Yeah, all good. So lots of stuff.
Right.
Download them all.
See you guys on Sunday. Bye.